Sleep is where most of us first realize that something is wrong. And this show exists because I wanted a place to have the whole conversation. The practical and the structural, the body and the system, what to do tonight, and why this is all so much harder than it should be. I want every parent who listens to walk away knowing that their instincts are not the problem. The framework you've been given is. I want every parent to understand that sleep is biological, it's developmental, it's relational, and it is not behavior to be trained. And I want every parent to know that they were never, ever meant to do this alone. And that if they're doing it alone right now, that is not a personal failure. That's a society that has failed to build what humans actually need. Welcome to The Rested Parent. My name is Jen Ballew. I am a doula, a pediatric sleep practitioner, and the founder of the Parenthood Project USA. I've spent over a decade in rooms with families at the most vulnerable threshold of their lives. This is a show about sleep, because sleep is what most parents come to me for and what most parents struggle the most with in early parenthood. But it's also a show about everything that sleep touches: the nervous system, the body, the household, the world we live within. The way we raise children in a society that wasn't built to support the work of raising them. Sleep is the door. The show is bigger than the door. Let's get into it. Okay, now it's time for me to get into that nice little vulnerable space. I'm going to share a story about my second because it is much more recent and it definitely sets the scene up. So, I gave birth to my daughter. She is 3 now, back in 2023. I went the single mom by choice route. By choice is a funny word, but it is where I ended up. And I had planned years for this beautiful redemptive birth experience with my daughter. My first birth was quite traumatic. I had a very unwanted C-section and I wanted to do it differently this time. And I did, and it was beautiful and it was amazing. And then you have the baby and reality hits. And I'm sure many of you can understand what that is like. The sleepless nights, the lack of support within this society that we live in, no paid maternal care for many, if not most of us, nothing structured into our society that values the postpartum stage or values postpartum care. We see a flood of conflicting information. How is a new parent able to navigate this space in an empowered way? It's not easy. So of course that's why I created this podcast, but back to the story. So I gave birth to my daughter. I obviously run a business. I'm self-employed, living in California at that time. And obviously no paid leave as a gig worker, self-employed individual, business owner. Whatever I was able to do, I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and figure it out on my own. Now, the knowledge was never a problem for me. I obviously understood what to expect. I had done years of research, working with families, coming to understandings of the postpartum period, how to heal, right? How to feed your baby, how to set realistic expectations. Like, the knowledge was not a problem, but the actuality of it is a lot different when you're actually living through it. And I survived my early postpartum financially by taking on easy work, some consultations here and there that I could do from home, taking on some placenta encapsulation, and things like that, as well as advanced bookings. Not much in the financial security department for myself. I didn't have much of any type of savings. Living in Southern California as a single parent, running my own business is not, although successful, it doesn't necessarily equate to that financial security, right? Especially when it comes to a single income home, and there's just no buffer there. And I obviously knew that going into it, but at some point, giving birth and raising a child is a leap of faith. And the desire can be there, but our capacity can often be limited based on the structure of the society that we live in, which is unfortunate and heartbreaking, because although I did struggle, I still had some resources, right? I can't imagine what it's like for new parents who just don't have those resources. Internally well-resourced, financially, externally resourced, that is, it was a bit of a struggle. And I came home one day, 3 to 4 weeks postpartum, still bleeding, recovering, struggling with postpartum in my own way. And I had an eviction notice on my door. Now, it obviously was not a surprise to me. I knew I hadn't paid rent. I knew that at some point that notice was going to show up, and I would have to figure something out. How was I going to pay my rent? How was I going to survive as a new mother? And I was blessed with a referral for a client who was also struggling with sleep with their 6-month-old baby. I was a little bit newer into that sleep coaching space. I had been working with families postpartum for years up to that point, and was starting to get my feet wet working with some of these older babies and older children. It was, a miracle for me to have a good position lined up. Even though I had to go back to work while I was still recovering and had not slept myself in about 6 weeks. I was going through the trenches as well. But isn't that the story that we are all left with, or many of us are left with here in this country? Whether it's similar to my own of having to go back to work way too early, still in the midst of the postpartum struggles, especially when it comes to sleep, or a parent struggling down the line, because what I came to realize while working with this parent was just how much bad information was out there. One thing before we move on. Almost every parent I work with asks me some version of the same question. Is this normal? Is my baby broken? Am I doing something wrong? So I wrote the answer down. It's called What's Actually Normal? A Field Guide to Sleep Across the First 5 Years. It isn't a schedule, and it isn't a method. It's a map. It walks you through what sleep actually looks like at every stage, from newborn through the preschool years. And it teaches you how to tell the difference between a disruption you can ride out and one that's asking you to shift something. Whether you're expecting or you're years into this, it will save you 100 late night searches. It's free, and the link is in the show notes. Okay, back to it. As I began to witness her struggle, I understood that the predominant sleep guidance, sleep rules that are out there were definitely not working for her. And that support, that ability to unpack what she had been learning and discover why that might be, took some work. And I share this because it was like a cyclone of what is wrong here? What is wrong? What is wrong? The lack of information, the lack of good information, the lack of care, the lack of value in that care, the lack of, the reality of bias in the information that is out there. And what are parents left with? What happens when these extremes just don't work, or they're asking you to become some type of sacrificial lamb to a method that just isn't working for you or isn't working for your baby? From this space, the Parenthood Project and the sleep focus was born from my daughter's birth, right? Got another birth out of it, from the struggle, right? Because that's how we birth. We birth in the struggle. We labor in the struggle. I didn't like it. And the more I began to follow that thread of that realization of just how lacking we are in whatever way that may be, and that our society, our systems, our everything is just not built to support it. So what is a ambitious business owner going to do who sees the problems in society and who has lived with them, through them myself, in my own situation, and witnessed other mothers struggle through it as well? What am I left to do? Do I stay in the trenches, or do I create something that might actually help a family, a parent, to begin to take their steps up and out? And that's why the Rested Parent is here. It's here to talk about these things, to unpack the really shitty information that's out there, to talk about the lack of support and structure that we are provided as new parents. What are we left to do? Where are we left to go? And this is the universal experience. You can be in a financial struggle, you can be in, and of course, right, this is not to say that privileges don't make things easier, they do, but even in that sense, we're all in the struggle. We are all in the struggle. Even if we think we aren't, we are. So where do we go from here? That's why I am here, and that's why the Rested Parent is here. So we can begin to talk about the reality, not the fluffy unicorn version, but the actual reality of what it is like to be giving birth, to be raising these children in this world that we are currently living in. So, what will this show be about? Concretely, practical sleep across developmental stages. What is happening in a baby's nervous system? What is happening in the postpartum body? And conversations with new parents, or parents who have been here a minute, practitioners and thinkers whose work has shaped my own, and occasionally a wider lens. When will these episodes be available? Bi-weekly. Bonus episodes when something is timely. So who is this for? Exhausted parents, practitioners, and anyone who senses the dominant story right now is incomplete. The myth. This is not a sleep training podcast. I'm not going to give you a method if that's what you came for. There are other places to find it, and I honor your choice. But this is going to be different. So I hope that you will begin to tune in. That's it for today. If something landed, if something shifted, or gave you a little bit more room to breathe, then this did exactly what it was supposed to do. If you're looking for more support, check the show notes for free guides and resources. Each one is built to meet you and your baby exactly where you are. If this episode resonated, share it with one parent who needs it or more. Word of mouth is how this works. I'm Jen Ballew. This is The Rested Parent. sleep well, or whatever rest looks like for you tonight. Toodaloo.